Hello there, and welcome to my little arty corner here on YouTube. My name's Angela Porter, and I love to draw, I love to create, I love patterns and textures and stylized art and patterns from Zentangle and imaginary flowers and objects and inspiration from nature and science and architecture and all kinds of wonderful things. And all of the inspiration I get tends to blend themselves into quite abstract kinds of imaginative art, which mostly pleases me in a weird and wonderful way. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for all the lovely comments. I still haven't got around to answering them, but I'll do my best after I've recorded this video, which I promise won't be as long as the last one. But I just want to show you this sketchbook again, briefly, because I want to show you something I want to show you because I'm really quite chuffed with this. So you've seen this page and this little bit on the bottom, which I finished that off in a video a couple of videos ago. But I have these two empty boxes here, so I filled them in last night, you know, just doodling around before bedtime. And I think I know what I want to do with them, but then not finished yet. This one I've added colour to. Now then, I like coloured pencils, but I can't work on top of coloured pencils with ink easily. You can, but I don't like it. It messes my pens up. If I use ink underneath coloured pencils, the coloured pencils mute the ink down, and then reworking the lines isn't so easy because it's a slick surface. So I have problems. So what I thought I'd do was I usually use Inktense, but I woke up this morning. At some point I woke up several times through the morning, but I thought, oh, I've got the Karin Brushmarker Pros, a full set of them. I haven't used those for a while. Because I was drawing on, it was actually, which background? This one here. And my pen nibs were getting gummed up with the pencil or the Inktense that's there. And I wasn't too happy about that. Oh, by the way, I love this. I'll explain about this in a moment. So I've tried, you know, some of these are Inktense. This is coloured pencil. This is fine liner and Karin. Fine liner and Karin. Over here, I've only just used fine liner pens. Both I've used black microns. The mossy grey is a Staedtler Triplus, and the bluey green, soft bluey green colour, and the more olivey colour here are you know, the olive colour is the olivey colour is right. No, the olive colour and the pale bluey. Let me get it right. I'm really not with it. I've lost the plot all of a sudden. Are the Uni Emot fine liner pens, and they're lush. They're brilliant because they are also permanent once they dry. But I discovered that if I do a light wash, even over these, which I think this pink was the Stabilo 88 fine liners, it hasn't moved. Or was it the Emots? Do you know, I can't remember because I did this last night. But these are certainly the Staedtler, either Staedtler or the Stabilo fine liners, and even though I wet over that, it's softened the lines a bit, but it hasn't shifted the colour very much, which makes me very happy. So this one here is where I added colour with the Karin brush markers, and I started adding a background with my favourite Diva Dance, and I love this. So I'm going to replicate something like this with you. I haven't finished this one. I want to add colour to this. These are all works in progress. You can see I'm beginning to fill in backgrounds. I really like this because I'm starting to get that sense of depth there with that. And so, with no further ado, I have cut, sorry, I've turned myself away from the speaker. I have cut myself a 4.5 inch by 4.5 inch square. This is Canson Imagine mixed media paper. That is about 11.5 centimetres by 11.5 centimetres, 11.5 by 11.5 centimetres if you wish. And I've just rounded the corners with my corner rounder. Now, Bear with me a moment. I don't intend to make you woozy, but I'm going to move my camera down. I could stop the video, but it's just as quick or quicker to do it this way. So let's move you in closer and get a nice angle here for you. How about that? Will that work? It possibly could. So I need my glasses. I need a pair of glasses so I can see what I'm doing. I need to lower my chair a little bit as well. Sat very high. I'm going to use some microns. Hopefully my microns are behaving themselves still. There is no guarantee they're going to, mind you. So I've got an 03, an 01 and an 05 micron. In my pencil case I have got a whole range of fine liner pens, and a Uniball eye, because I sometimes like to draw with that, as I like to draw with fountain pens from time to time. I do like to switch things up. But let's just get on to this, is it? So I'm going to start with now you see I want to reach for a ruler, but I'll be good. In Zentangle fashion, I'm going to draw roughly a border here. The lines are wobbly. I am not going to stress and fret about that one little bit. They are what they are, and they will be what they will be. Now then, I could work that way, but you know what? I fancy working diagonally, because I said I was going to replicate one of those, or that kind of style. But what I think I'd like to do is to actually draw flowers or seed pods. Let's do a flower, or 2 or 3. So I'm going to start with the close, about an inch, so about 2.5 centimetres below the corner. And I'm going to draw, well, it's a frowny face. If you turn it the other way up, it's a smiley face, but a semicircle here. And then I'm going to finish the bottom of it with another curve like this. So I've got that kind of shape. Now then, what I'm going to do next, and I'm just moving my hand to the side so hopefully you'll be able to see what my pen's doing. And I've got a runny nose now. Great. Hopefully it'll stop. Perhaps not. So I'm going to start, I don't know, about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch up here. It was probably about 3 or 4 millimetres, not centimetres. And I'm going to draw another C around here like that. Hang on, let me just, I have got a tissue here, so I'm bumbling around here. Excuse me. It's tree pollen season. That's all I'm going to say. All right, so this is the centre of the flower, and I'm going to put petals around, but I'm going to draw the shape in pencil that I want to get these, because I want my flower to have longer petals towards the base and shorter as we go around to the side. So it's not quite a perfect oval. I'm going to use the inner pencil lines on this to draw them. And I think I could actually do with this just a bit longer, because I want to feel that this flower is more or less sort of like we're looking at it from an angle, not from directly on the top. So pencil guidelines are always helpful for things like this. So my petals are going to go, the edge of the petals are bending outwards. You can see they're curving outwards a little bit. And then at the bottom, hopefully I've got my hand out the way. I'm going to turn them into like a heart shape. So then I'm going to do the next one here. Now, these lines need to be closer together towards the centre and further apart on the edge, and bending them outwards this way will work. And then I can add that. So again, I'm going to do another one here. And another. Now, I'm roughly following the pencil lines. And at the top, I'm not going to do much of the, I'm going to have these almost flat, perhaps with a little suggestion of that kind of heart shape there, because they'll actually be folding under. So strictly speaking, we don't actually need any kind of lump or bump, you know, little dip in the middle. So, and these will actually then become more or less straight as we get to the top. And then if I go from the bottom, this side, we're going to match the curve here as we've done before. And I'll just move this around. I can draw from this side. So again, I'm going to start here. I'm going to match this curve kind of, then join these together and repeat as they get shorter and shorter, and then here we are at the top and we've got two there. Now I'm not worried one little bit that they're all slightly different widths and sizes, because we now have a flower. So next thing I want to do, and I will draw this in pencil, and this is a good thing to do if you're not very comfortable with drawing behind. So I'm just drawing a line that goes from the middle of the flower down. In fact, that line is almost a diagonal, so if you wanted to, you could have put the diagonal in. So this is where I want to have the stem, but I do want to put flowers on it. But to make it easier, rather than leaving gaps for flower stems, I'll draw the flowers. Leaves, Angela, leaves. That's what the green things are that grow out of a stem. So I'm going to do this, and at the end I'm just going to round it at the corner like so. Yeah, let me just readjust the autofocus, hopefully. There we go. Right then, so that looks quite interesting. It does look like the flower's a bit tilted towards us, but the centre tilted backwards. I don't always get these right, you know, but it'll be fine, it'll work. So for my leaves, I really want them to curl back in towards the stem. So I'm going to draw a kind of a letter J, or half a heart. Then I'm going to go from the point here, I'm just going to round the point around, and I'm going to curve it like that so it becomes an S. There's almost an S shape that I've drawn. And then I'm going to go from roughly about the middle of this, and I'm going to get this to connect back to the stem there. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on this side, but in mirror. So a letter J, and then from this an S shape back, and then from about halfway down, it's not critical, but just bring it back to meet like that, and they don't have to be identical on each side. And what I'm going to do here as well is I'm just going to pop in a little, well, it's a kind of a mooka, isn't it? I just like putting little fidgety things, fussy things on. And that'll go back to a point there. So I quite like that. And I think I'll do the same thing a bit further down. So letter J, you know, it's an upside down J or half a heart. S shape to create the top of the leaf that's curled over. Then about halfway down and bring it back to meet. We'll do the same on the other side. So the other half of the heart with the stem in between, an S shape, and then about halfway down and bring that back to meet this here. And then we're going to draw a spirally mooka, or whatever kind of mooka you want to do. If you prefer to do an ordinary Mooka, or you want to do something like flux or some other leaves or something else here, feel free. It's your drawing. Choose what you like to do. And of course you can just copy me, which is fine. That's why I'm doing it. Now I've got these lovely spaces here, and these will look great with just a bit of a flex, isn't it? Just going between them, because these little curls may be buds, you know. I don't really know. So now I'm going to pick up my 03 pen so I can add some details, like I want to add some corner rounding, and I will want to add some line weight, but where these lines meet I do want to thicken the lines that little bit so they end up looking a little bit more like stained glass, I suppose, you know, where the leading is. Don't forget this little bit here. In fact, it helps to make sense of that shape quite a lot, which is lovely. Okay, so we'll do the same here. So a little bit there, a little bit here, some there, some down here. Didn't do that one up there, did that one though. And this helps to hide the sins, as it were, because you can redraw the lines where perhaps things have overlapped, where a line's missed stopping, because that happens with me quite often. So I do tend to draw quite quickly. And this paper has got a lot of bumpiness to it. And I do prefer a much smoother paper, I do have to say. So we've got that going on. Now I'm going to switch to my 01, because I want to put some detail in these little leaves. Now, as I'm going to add colour with the Karin Pro markers, I could have left this until I've added the colour, but because microns are permanent, mostly waterproof when they dry. I say mostly because some of the pigments, the little bits of pigment, the little bits of solid, the pigment in the ink, some do sit on the surface of the paper and they can be shifted with water. So the ink won't bleed itself, but some of the pigments might shift. My solution to that is to use an eraser on the pen drawing before I do any water-based medium. There's still some ink picked up, but if you're careful, it's barely noticeable. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so for these, I want to put a line that goes from the middle of this bit to the middle here, so it bends as well. It's not a straight line, it bends with a curve. These are called contour lines, and contour lines, not contour lions, Angela, but contour lines help to give you that feeling that the leaf is curved, it's bent, it's not flat. And I'm just breaking them with a dot or two just to give a bit of variation in the line. So here I'm starting halfway on this part of the leaf, and I'm just drawing this line following the shape of the leaf, but down to the middle. And again, I'm going to add a line on either side, roughly splitting that leaf up. And you can see the difference that's made compared to the other leaves. Really simple. Well, I say it's simple. Once you get the hang of it, once you can see how it's done, and you've given it a go a couple of times, and you've had that, oh, so that's how it works moment, the aha moment, or ta-da. Then you do get it. It's just one of those things that it seems harder than it is in many ways, in my opinion. Okay, and not everybody will explain, you know, how these things work, I guess. I'm sure there are plenty of people on YouTube who do, but in all my time watching various art and things, people don't really explain what this is and how you do it and why you do it. But I could be wrong. I'm sure there's plenty who do, just I haven't found them. So same here. So we're treating this furl over as if it's a separate part of the leaf, as an individual shape. We're not taking the whole leaf as one, we're looking at the individual shapes and figuring out what we need to do with them. So here I want to go from the middle down the central part of this leaf, and then the same on either side. So we're adding veins into the leaf, and in a way that will make sense of all of this. So again, start at the middle, and I'm going to go around to the middle of this curve here-ish. It doesn't have to be precisely that, but it's more important that you get that curve in to suggest this is curled over, that it's not flat. And again, about halfway along here, split it. And I'm glad this pen is writing fine, because this was the one that was getting clogged up while I was drawing on the Inktense. I'm not going to do anything with the Mookas. What I do want to do though, or I will want to do, is something with these petals. And but before I do that, I do want to add some line weight. So I'm going to go to the left of my stem, which I have got some darker bits, and just around the bottom. I'm going to go to the left of my leaves and the bottom, which is here and a little bit there, around the bottom of that, to the left and bottom of my Mooka, and that's the underneath bit. Same here, just like that, half there, and around the bottom like so, and inside that curve. Now on the other side it's a little bit different, because obviously they're mirror images, so I want a thicker line on the left and the bottom here. This is the left side of this leaf, this is the left side there at the bottom, and here it will still be under the bottom there and under the top there. So this is the left side of the leaf and the bottom there, a little bit there I think. Do a little bit there, I have now. And this is the left side, that's the left and bottom there, well, bottom and, you know, until about halfway up the right. This side we're going to have some thickness underneath, and then halfway around this really. And that just adds that feeling that we've got, you know, really nicely voluminous. The leaves aren't, again, even though they're curled, they're not thin, they've got some volume to them. Okay, for this one I'm going to add some shadow on that and around here, and perhaps a little bit there. Here definitely going to be around the bottom there, a little bit there. And then with the petals I'm going to focus on the little curves on the end of the petals, and perhaps a little bit between the petals where I'm going to add some darkness, and at the top as well where I'm going to round the corners or add some line weight here. I promise this will, well, I hope it'll be less than an hour. I'm going, oh no. I can hope, can't I? You can hope. So I'm just doing this around here, and I will do that here because again it's that feeling that things are connected, and I quite like that, the density of line. I'm going to do the same at the bottom, where I'm just going to thicken that line a little bit. Do the same here, the same there. So I'm not filling in that little gap between them, but but I just want some extra darkness here. Now I can begin to add some extra line weight to the left and bottom of these curvy bits, and that sort of like rounding, or that extra blackness just there. Like so. Again, same thing here. I need to just do that one. Let's do that. It's almost like that this dark line leads into that shadowed, or that extra thicker line here, as if there's a gap between them. So again, I'll do the same here. I sort of like change the shape of that line a little bit, but it'll be fine. Do the same here, and then we're done. This is the last of the petals that needs that. So now I've got something that is very solid, very distinct, very what's the word I'm looking for? It's very outlined, it's very clear. Okay, I did say I wanted to put something in here, and I'm going to. I'm using my 03 pen, and I'm going to put some smaller hearts inside, like so. This gives me the option to use two different colours, or a paler version of the same flower. It's entirely your choice how you do this. You may not want to add this, and that's fine as well. You can keep it nice and simple. I just rather like the complexity. Now with these, I'm not finishing the heart off. I'm just putting the borders in. That one I did a bit wrong, but nobody will notice. They'll think that's how the petal grew. This one perhaps is starting to have some curving going on there. This one perhaps is a shorter one. And then this is the last one. And there. And the last thing I want to do is this bit on the top. There are plenty of things I could do, but what I am going to do is I'm going to add some lines like so. So I've got curved lines going from the top middle of this. In fact, I think I might need to put another one there because I've made that too small, but it doesn't matter too much. And then I'm going to curve them downwards in a similar kind of curve. Well, I was hoping for a similar kind of curve. I've made it more curvy than I need to, as these. Now that gives me options, because here I can colour these in like a checkerboard pattern, and I think I may split these two bigger ones up as well. Perhaps that one. That one. So it'll be tricky to fill in because they're quite small, or I could just use it as that background pattern. You know, sort of doing like, is it an Zentangle, where you draw like round the corners inside? That would look quite nice actually, but I'll decide on that later on. Now, I want to create patterns that go to either side of this. I want this to be surrounded by patterns, and there's a number of ways of doing this. I want to build sections here that I can fill with backgrounds where I can have things curling off. And because I've used Mooka here, I think I may use Mooka in this kind of way. And I did want to have it coming out from there really, but we'll use it as it is, like so. So I've got a section here that I can colour and add pattern to, but what would be quite nice is if I perhaps take a Mooka from here like so, and then just bring that back, a little bit of corner rounding, and this here. And then I can do the same here really, because I can have one touching and going back there. So all quite organic kinds of patterns and shapes. So what I'm going to do on this side, I think I'm okay with this, though I'm almost tempted to fill. No, I'm going to leave as it is, but I am going to draw my edge in, and I'm going to deliberately put some wiggles in the line because I haven't drawn this with a ruler, so I want it to look particularly hand drawn, and this is how I make things look particularly hand drawn. Drawing a single flower on the diagonal is quite a nice thing to do because you have you've got a much longer, you can have the flower a lot taller than it was. Okay, so I'm going to use the same ideas here, but perhaps in a slightly, they will end up being drawn slightly differently, and that's fine, because although we can draw flowers symmetrical, if we don't work quite so hard on being symmetrical, then and worry about it, then it always works out no matter what. This one here, and then I'm going to have this one coming down and just touching that one, just kissing it, and going here, and then just going back there. Again, I'm just going to go around. I'm almost tempted, actually, I think with this side, I think I will have one just going there. There's just something nice about that shape that's created now here. And here I may just put a small one in here. It didn't quite make it to the edge. That works quite nicely. I know there's 4 on each side, it'll bug me, but it's fine. I do like odd numbers of things. Now here I am going to draw the background in here, or the border in there, so there's a limit as to how far I'm going to add any colour. That one quite nicely works out there, and here as well. So that is my drawing, mostly. One last thing I'd like to do, you know what it is, it's adding ink to where lines connect. So these little parts of the Mookas where they connect back here, back there, those little bits here, there'll be some here too, there, there and here. I prefer to do this with a finer pen, to be honest. The 05 can, and this is a tip for you, is that using a bigger nib, I'm using an 05, I do prefer thicker lines in my drawings. I don't like fine lines, generally. So I'd swap down a nib size, but I know not everybody has the luxury of having different size pens. Now then, I want to add some line weight, and it's again going to be the bottom and left. So here's my bottom, and there's the left. Bottom and the left I've done. This is basically the left and bottom there, and we'll just add some weight around there. This one will be there, and this one is the bottom, and perhaps a little bit there just for the left. On this side we've got the left is round here, and this is the left too. bottom of that Mooka is there. Under here is also the bottom, and we've got some of the left side there. I've gone inside that, so I've narrowed that one just a bit, but it'll be fine. Here, left and bottom again. And then this is the left and the bottom, kind of, all the way down. We want that one darker. And then this one, this is the left and the bottom. Let me just connect those there. This is the left, but when we get to here, we're starting to curve over to the top, so this part here will be part of the bottom now as well. So there we are. It's very Art Nouveau-ish. Probably a bit of arts and crafts, but I'm quite happy with that. Now then, I want to add colour to the background before I draw on it. So I bought my Karin brush markers up with me, and I am thinking that I want to choose, excuse me there, some colours that will work quite nicely, or ones that I would like here. I tend towards pink for flowers, which is a bit, you know, ordinary. But I think the background space, I think I'm going to do it in a blue. So it's a bit like sky, I guess. And I'm just going to attack this with an eraser now, just to get rid of pencil lines more than anything, because once I work on top of them with a medium, I can't guarantee I'm going to be able to remove my pencil lines. So if I do it now, I know they've gone, and some of that loose pigment. Okie dokes. Now I have got here somewhere, I did bring it with me, piece of kitchen towel. I was using this earlier to wipe my brush off. I've got a water brush. This is a Kuretake Zig, and it's got a fine nib in it. And I'm going to use quite a dark blue. I've got indigo, royal blue, sapphire blue. I've got an Egyptian blue. Oh, what colour's that? Oh, that looks nice. It's sort of like, it's a nice light blue, an Arctic blue. But I actually quite want to use quite a dark colour. So I am tempted by the sapphire. Now, what I found has worked on papers that aren't watercolour paper for these inks is I'm going to look and work out where I want the darkest colours. And I think I want the darkest colours behind the plant and fading out to the edge, okay? I'm not going to do all of the sections, trust me. You really wouldn't want to watch me do this. But what I have found is that if I wet this area with some water first and just touch this, you can see the colour spread out. Now I'm going to need quite a bit of colour here because I'm going to have to move this over quite a large area. But I can come back with my water brush, which supplies a constant flow of water to the tip, and then I can gradually move this out. You have to work fairly quickly because you don't want the ink to dry, but we can move it out a bit at a time and colour the whole of this section in. Now I'm getting a lot of ink moving away, blotching and so on here, but we'll work it out now in a minute. It'll work out beautifully, I hope. It did in my book. So well, the sections this big, actually they weren't, so I wouldn't normally try to add watercolour on such a big section or water soluble medium, but as I'm going to be drawing on top of this, it's not going to bother me too much, to be honest, whether I've got very smooth colour here or not. It's just more of that sense of a change in the intensity of colour, that gradation of colour, gradual change from light to dark. So I am taking some time just to help spread this out so it becomes that little bit more intense towards the edge, perhaps. But in this area here, right in the middle, where it's become quite pale, much paler than I wanted, I can go back, add some more dots of colour, and I'm deliberately adding dots, just touching the tip of the pen to the wet paper because the ink spreads out with the water, but I'm not working it into the paper itself, because I know these pens, like Tombows and so on, the ink can stick to the paper if you do that, and I don't want it to stick to the paper. I want to be able to move it out. And I'm going to have brush strokes in this, and to be honest with you, I'm fine with that today. Okay, so we've got that going on. I'll do another area because that's got to dry before I can do anything on it. Now it's not quite dark enough there, so I think I'm going to have to just add a dot of that ink there and just help it to perhaps spread just a little bit out, like so. There we are, that's better. I like that. I could get to really enjoying doing this. So I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to add lots of water where I want it darkest. I say lots of water, I'm putting water down so that the ink won't dry into the paper, as I said. So I'm dotting plenty of ink here. I can see where I didn't get the water, so I want to move quite quickly, and then just gently pull this out. I've got a lot more, I've got relatively more ink here, even though it's a smaller amount of ink than the other one, but this is a smaller space. And am I worried that this is going to perhaps not be exactly the same intensity of blue as the other area? The answer is no. It's not going to bother me one little bit. It will be what it will be, and I'm fine with that. And I'm quite fine with the textures that are appearing as I'm fussing around with it as well. So there's another one. And it's catching, you can see how wet, wet the paper is still. We'll do one more area for good luck. I'll do this one over here, because I don't want to risk putting my hand in these areas and just moving it around, as it were. I've got some here, and again it's the same idea. So I'm just allowing this to just move as it needs to. There we go. That might end up being a little bit lighter at the base here, so I'm just going to add some more ink in and just dab it along. I'm so glad I finally worked this out, this trick of wetting it before you add the colour. So I was using a palette to put the ink on, to rub it on a plastic palette and then pick the colour up with my pen. And that really does result in quite a light colour, and I was looking for this intensity, and I finally figured it out. Woohoo! I'm so happy. Okay, these need to dry. So while they're drying, I'm going to add some colour to my leaves. And I'm going to use this pen, which is an olive green. You can see the colour of the top. Well, it's not really that colour, but I'm going to use the same idea where I'm going to wet the areas that I want to be darkest. So I want them darkest close to the stem and underneath the curve there, because that will be in shadow. And then I can just gently just move the edge out and use that to blend to give a lighter colour in the middle. And if I need to add more colour, I can. And I think I might need just a bit more there, and perhaps just a bit more along here. I don't know why I keep clicking the lids on and off when I'm using them. It's a bit daft, really. Okay, now with this one, I will want, don't want to put it on dry paper, Angela. I want shadow at the base here and at the tip. And yep, there's a little bit of green left on my brush, and I'm fine with that because I can see where the water is. So I'm going to put the dark colour there and some dark here. And again, I'm just going to move them out like so. Take some of the colour off so I can get a lighter colour in between. And there's one of my leaves done. And you can see there's a subtle highlight there, which helps with that feeling of things curling over and bending. This line here is a bit on the, solid edge. This one's not so much, so I just want to blend that one out just a little bit more to give not such a harsh line there. So that's how I do those. Those are dry. So now I could use different colours for the Mooka and for everything else, but I think I'm in the habit these days of trying to keep things fairly simple. So for these little flexes, or these little leaflets here, depending on what you prefer to call them, I'm just putting dark colour at the end and allowing it to fade out to the lightest at the tip, so it looks like it's tucked in. In fact, if anything, I could perhaps just put a little bit of darkness along the bottom edge just to bring that shadow out. Okay, right, I need to go and do something. I'll be back in a mo. There we are, job done. Back again. Yeah, I know, I'd left the heating on and I was getting so hot up here, it's ridiculous. Okay, so I've done some colouring here now. So what I want to do is to fill these sections in with a pattern. And for that I'm going to use my 03 or 01. I think I'll use the 01. And I am going to choose my favourite pattern to fill things in with for now, which is Diva Dance, because I absolutely love the way that looked, although I did like the one that looked like little flowers as well. Yeah, I know. So I'm going to start by drawing a line in here, and I can go in and add ink to areas that I need to, where there's perhaps little bits of white showing through. And I'm just going to start by giving this a simple aura. Then on this line I'm going to draw in some inky black humps, inky bumps of ink, and I'm making them long and quite flat. And then the next line you draw fairly close, about the same distance away as the original one here, but it's not critical. If they vary, they vary, like so. And then I'm going to add some inky humps in places, varying where I put them so it looks interesting. When you put the bumps in the dips, you can lose the bump, if you will. So just think about that. And I am drawing them even over the darkest blue because there's hints of this here. And what I like to do with Diva Dance is speckle them, the black humps, with little dots of white. And you can see how it's beginning to build up nicely here. Well, I think so. And I'll just keep going one line at a time until I filled this space in. So I'll carry on with that. So I'm using an 01. I really detest colouring in spaces with an 01. Trying to be as light-handed and gentle as I can with the pen, because this is how I wreck pens. My bumps are getting a bit bigger here, and I'm fine with that, because nothing says they all have to be the same size and shape. There's all kinds of different ways you can vary Diva Dance, which I've done in the past. I'm not just talking about the variations like Diva Dance, Foxtrot and Rock and Roll and so on. But I like to put little hearts here instead of bumps, or the tops of hearts, so it looks like we've got little hearts tucked in the layers. Yeah, I know. What I like though about having the background coloured and having it as gradients is that it automatically adds sort of shadow and highlight to these. I'll tell you what, I really like this here. I don't know if you can see the texture on that spot. Let me have a look. Let's zoom in. See the lovely watercolour texture. It seems a shame to draw over it. That was completely unintentional. I don't know if I'll ever be able to replicate it. Okay, we'll stay zoomed in. I'll keep my pen here, and I'll try and keep my hand to the other side so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. And just keep on doing this. I'm taking my time, and I really enjoy seeing how this builds up. And perhaps I'll just do some auras on the other end. I'm starting to think now it's getting quite light towards the other end, so perhaps I don't need to do quite so many inky bumps there, but I'll keep inky bumps towards the darker areas as well. Perhaps have more of them there and just the odd one at the other end. And maybe I'll start to widen. There's a little inky bump there, a little flat one. Start to widen these here so there's less black and more colour showing through. Oh, you can't see, moved off the camera. Can you see I'm starting to widen this, and perhaps I can help that by, it looks a bit awkward there, but if I make my bump that little bit longer, suddenly it looks a bit more deliberate and intended to work that way. So there's always ways of fixing things. And I think it's just about trusting the process and not being invested in a definite outcome, but an execution of an idea in a way it works. And you know, I'm thinking about, well, Diva Dance is quite black, ink black, in, you know, quite intense in that way. So how can I introduce a lightness towards the end? Well, the answer is both by reducing the number of the black humps and the size of them, but also by starting to spread these lines apart so that they don't have so much ink in a given space. The sort of density of ink is reduced. And I'm going to start reducing the size of the humps towards this end as well. We're beginning to get variations happening. So these are things that I do, but I don't necessarily think about them in words. I'm not quite sure how I get these ideas. They just seem to appear in my head, which sounds weird, but it's how I think. And so it's good for me to sort of talk things out loud, really. So I'm still adding the lumps and bumps, just not as many of them. And perhaps I can have one here. Oh, that one I put a bit close, didn't I? But it's okay, because the next one I'll make sure I spread it apart. My mind was, I was wool gathering on about something else. My mind had wandered off to something. I wasn't paying much attention here, but it's fine. It's perfectly imperfect. And again, I think that's a good attitude to have. It's like in my sketchbooks, although a lot of my sketchbook work looks perfect, I guess, or, you know, polished. It's how I draw. It's how I've drawn since as long as I can remember. And but there are errors there. There's a lot of ideas there that haven't worked out, things I need to think about before I finish the work, or, you know, I go back to it and go, now I know what that needs. And, you know, lots of experiments with things, particularly with different medias and colours and patterns and all kinds of things, lettering and what have you. And some of it's a bit like an art journal where I record thoughts and my feelings, but in a weird and wonderful way, sometimes with words there, but in a way that doesn't give out much information about what's going on, just that I'm out of sorts in a way. So let's get this finished instead of me yabbering on, because I can yabber and talk sometimes. Yabber? Jabber? Jibber jabber? I don't know. Don't even know if yabber's a word. Jibber jabber, I know, is a phrase, isn't it? Jibber jabbering, sort of like going on and on, chatting on and on. Oh, I can do that. I'm a master of the art of that. Nearly done. I'm thinking that another pattern that would be lovely to fill this space would be senna. But just about anything, I think, you know, there are so many that would make great filler patterns for this, you know. And there we are, we've got the last little humpy bump there. I'm going to put one there, some there. And you can see, I'll zoom out, and I just love the effect that gives. And this is why I prefer to put the colour down first, because I know that I won't get any of the black pigment flowing into the colour, and the colour is pure behind it. But it really does give that feeling that this is falling away, that it's like a waterfall going down, you know, downwards. You've got the river coming in and going down here. And this one, I think I would be tempted to have lines going in the same direction, to be honest, and down here. So shall I, you know, sort of like, I can take some that go this way. I don't want to go in a different direction, or I could add a different pattern there. But I am tempted to stick with Diva Dance. But perhaps here I'll create a whirlpool with Diva Dance Rock and Roll, possibly. That could be fun, actually. I'm now stuck with what I want to do, because I'm looking at this and thinking, well, how, if I start going this way, it's going to feel a disjointedness here, isn't it? But it's almost like we can do that, but perhaps it's by, yeah, that's how I'm going to do it. Is like, almost like it's connected to this, as if some of this water is flowing underneath this stem perhaps, and we're still going to have it disappearing into the edge down here. So that kind of works, I think. Sometimes it just takes a few moments to stop and think, and you know, a resolution to the irksome nature of how on earth am I going to do this appears. And it is kind of me following these. But there's going to be a change in a moment, because I've got, it's beginning to get lighter here, so again I'm going to start widening the lines towards the top and trying to keep them quite close together at the bottom, and having that variation in density of ink as well. Trying to tidy the shape of this one up. My hand-eye doesn't want to work today. So, and then I can add perhaps some ink here. So, not sure whether this was the right way to fix on, you know, to focus this or to add this, but it is what it is, and you know, it's there is a kind of disconnect, but it sort of works as well. This is a bit of a strange shape there. It doesn't feel right. That feels better. And perhaps this needs a bit of a line there, and that one does. So the shapes of the end of the lines help with the sense of the lines bending or changing shape and direction. So that really helps. And it does feel like there's a barrier here, or some kind of dam or bridge or something that the river's changing direction on, but the water's all flowing down somewhere behind this flower into some kind of sinkhole. Well, I think so. You can argue with me if you like, and your interpretation of it could be completely different to mine, and that's fine. I do think that though, you know, a lot of art can have like a story that is very easy to see, the artwork itself can make us feel or think different things, because it's a very personal reaction to art. It's very subjective. You know, if you like it, you like it. That's how I say. I can appreciate art, you know, good art like, you know, the old masters and things like that. I appreciate their skill and talent, but the art doesn't really do much for me. I'm just going, yeah, okay. I get more excited about prehistoric art and prehistoric pottery than I do about the old masters. But then there's other artists whose work just wows me. You know, I love Kandinsky's work. I love some Picasso. I love some Wang Gris, the abstract artists, the cubists. And then, of course, William Morris and the arts and crafts movement and Art Nouveau I love. And, you know, there's others along the way, the sculptors of the Romanesque and Gothic architecture, you know, in the medieval times, and so much more. And it's just, yeah, you know, so, yeah, I'm waxing lyrical. So I've done a bit of this with you. What I will do while the video is processing is you know, over the next day or so, I'll complete the rest of this. I'll fill these with colour and I'll add Diva Dance. And I may do Diva Dance on one side and something different on the other. A bit Jekyll and Hyde-ish, I suppose. But in a nice way. A nice Jekyll and Hyde. And I will see you again. So thank you for joining me. I hope you find this one interesting and useful, and I hope you give it a go. So until I see you again, take care. Look after yourselves, which is the same as take care. Yeah. And find time to be creative. Ta-ta for now. Bye.